Inherited home calls are calls that we get quite often. They either come from local brothers and sisters, sons and daughters of homes that have come into their possession through either estates or trusts, or in the case where somebody has passed, they are an heir, but there is no formal paperwork in place. Those are estates, probates, and trusts types of calls, wills as well. Those types of calls, it really depends on whether you're in Kansas or Missouri to ultimately sell the house. All of those inherited homes and estate homes can be sold. It's just a matter of the processes that you have to take, whether there is a will or a trust in place, whether there is not, whether it needs to go through probate, or whether ultimately you can sign it over as in an affidavit like you can in Missouri. Each of them have their own set of variables. It all can be done. The reasons you want to do it is because it's just simply easy. You don't need to take on, and many times you're taking on a burden, even though it's a large asset. But when you have your own life going on, you got your own kids in school, you got your own circles that you're running every single day, a house with all of its contents and all the possessions it can be a burden. It can be burdensome. Sometimes the emotional burden is as much of a burden as the possessional burden. And so the whole scenario can be very overwhelming for homeowners. And we get that. We understand that. That's why we take on all the stuff. If you don't want to deal with this stuff, you can leave it. We work with companies that ultimately will come through and we volunteer and donate some of those larger items. They'll take what they need for their clientele and whoever organization they work for, and take the stuff in that direction, but the rest of it can be left and we ultimately can dispose of the property. So there's a really ease of the burden, potential burden, that a cash buyer can present to the table when it's done in a proper way. And we have resources that will sift through the variables, understand what you're working with, and ultimately find an endpoint for the home and take care of all the variables that may be adopted with that home as well. Timeline-wise, it can really openly vary. So a person that is willed or is entrusted as a trustee with the home has the ability to sign it over as if it was their own home. And that can take as little as 10 to 12 days. If you have to take the home, say in Kansas, and go through probate, first you have to do what's called a determination of descent, so the court can ultimately bless you as the inheritee. That takes minimum 5 to 6 weeks, and then ultimately once you're determined as the inheritee, then ultimately you can sign it off much like you can with a trust. So that would be a 10 to 12 day underwriting process. In Missouri, it could be still much more fast-tracked because you only simply need an affidavit of heirship, and so a notarized sheet of paper that says, yes, I am the heir of X, and I have the ability to inherit and then sign over the will and trust of this home to a third party. You have the ability to do that. So it just kind of varies depending on state and the variables, and that's something we're very comfortable with, and sitting down and asking the questions and guiding. We have resources, real estate attorneys that ultimately can handle those types of situations. The closing companies that we use are very aware of estates, trusts, and wills, probates, and those timelines, so we can still set up our contract even while we're going through these processes to ultimately get you to the point where you can sign that title over to a company like KC Property Guys, and through the closing company. Of course, we pay all those closing costs, and so everybody's covered. We'll ensure that title is clean, so you as the inheritee are protected, and as well as us receiving the title is protected as well.